Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I just want to take a couple of minutes today to talk about coping skills. So, I'm going to be doing a series over the next few weeks, really breaking down some very specific coping skills and strategies that we can use for ourselves, with our kids, with our students. So, I want to start off today just talking about really what are coping skills. So, especially in the last 18 months to a year, we have had a lot of emotional highs and lows. I'm sure that you can probably relate to this. We've all felt, kind of spikes of anxiety and overwhelm and stress and maybe anger. And so, coping skills are something that help us to cope, hence the name, with those big emotions. And so, we know, especially in schools right now, or if you have kiddos at home, kids are really struggling with some of these big emotions. Things have been so different in their lives for the last almost 2 years. Um, and a lot of kids are struggling to know how to cope with these emotions that maybe they didn't feel in such big ways prior to the pandemic. So, coping skills are just that. They're the strategies that we use to help ourselves cope with stress or anger or anxiety, or any of those big emotions that we feel. And so, we can teach kids different coping skills that they can use. These are very similar to de escalation skills, right? That we can use kind of in the moment when we're feeling really angry. The cool thing about coping skills is that they can actually be sort of categorized into these five different areas. And so once we introduce these areas to kids, they can start to determine which of those categories would work for them at that time. So, for instance, if you just think back yourself to the last time you felt really stressed out or really upset about something or anxious about something, then what you needed at that time would have fallen into one of these five categories. And what we need at different times and different situations obviously varies. So, these categories that our coping skills fall into, the categories that I use, the names that I use, I should say, um, are relax is the first one, distract, sensory, move, and think. So there are your five. So relax, distract, sensory, move, and think. And so, what I'm going to do over the next few weeks is really break down some specific strategies for each of those. But today, I'm just going to give you an overview. So, the first one is relax. So, obviously, those would be activities that help us to calm our body down, right? And turn off our brain. Distract are those activities that help distract us from what's going on, whatever it is that we're worried about or anxious about or feeling upset about. Sensory are our five senses. So things that we can smell, things that we can touch, that we can hear, like music, that help calm us. Move is movement, moving our bodies. And think are those things that we can do to start kind of processing through our emotions and the situation in our brain. So, a couple of these can be broken down even more. Like, for instance, move, we have gross motor and we have fine motor activities. So, we're going to spend kind of one video uh, kind of talking through what each of these strategies is, or what each of these categories is, and then talking about different strategies within that category. And the hope is that by teaching kids or ourselves, whoever we're talking about, the 5 different categories, we can start to get to the point when we are feeling those big emotions to kind of figure out and prioritize what we need. So there are times when we're really, really stressed out with work and family commitments and things like that, right? And we just need to relax. We need to just stop and relax our body. And maybe in those times, movement is really not going to be the answer for us. But other times, when we're feeling really angry, and have you ever felt anger? You know, where you can feel it in your hands and your arms, maybe your legs, your chest. Maybe we need to move them because we need to get our body loose. There are other times when the stress or anxiety is something that we need to kind of figure out and work through. We need to think through some things. And so maybe the think category is appropriate at that time. So we teach the 5 categories and then we teach the strategies within them so that kids can start to figure out what's going to work for them in that moment or in that situation. And then they can choose the appropriate coping skill. So that's where we're headed in the next few weeks. We're going to break down each of these categories, and I am going to give you some strategies and some resources for each of them. But I wanted to make sure that we all kind of understood and were on the same page with what are coping skills. So this is really an important skill for our kids to have in terms of their emotional regulation. And remember, we need to be able to recognize that we have emotions and that we're having an emotion in that moment. We need to be able to identify what it is. So we need the vocabulary. And then we need strategies to help us self regulate. And so that's what these coping skills are. So I hope that you'll join me over the next few weeks as we start to learn about each of these different types of coping skills. So until next time, have a great couple of weeks.